Okay, hello. Welcome everyone to our no this is November, right? November Mingle with the Flamingos. The year's just flying by. So tonight we have two readers. Our first is going to be Raphael Delalo, and our second will be Michelle R. Smith. This is Raphael has something special for us tonight, which I'm very, very excited about. He's going to be presenting his book, Houseplant Warrior, and he is going to be doing demonstrations to show us how to keep plants alive, which looking around our house, I definitely could use that help. So anyway, I am going to read his bio, and then Raphael, I'll let you take it away, and then we'll follow it with, after Raphael goes, Michelle will read, and then we'll take a break and come back for an open mic. Anybody is free to share their work. If you'd like to share this will be up on our YouTube channel, so you can pass it around, and I'll put it up with your guys' book links and that. Okay, so first up, let's see. Ooh, I just closed. Sorry, I'm like really showing my age now. I'm closing out the thing I'm supposed to be reading. Okay, Raphael Delalo is the founder of Ohio Tropics and helps tens of thousands of people learn how to grow houseplants through his daily tips on Instagram and his blog site at www.ohiotropics.com. And his book, Houseplant Warrior, has been honored by all sorts of things. I mean, it's all over the place. It was in the New York Times. It was in stuff from all over Cleveland. I know you've been traveling for this book and doing readings all over the place. So it's very, very exciting to have you on. He received his certificate of home horticulture from the Oregon State University as a part of their Master Gardener program, and he completed a Green Gardener program at the Cleveland Botanical Gardens. And he is also a member of the American Orchid Society. Raphael, I'm going to let you take it away, and thank you again.
Thank you. Thanks, Jeremy. So what I'll be doing tonight, I do have a presentation that I give for my book. It's going to be a little bit shorter than normal, but it's still the same material. This is my book, Houseplant Warrior. I'm one of those people that quit their corporate jobs during the pandemic. What was that called? What did they call that? The Great Exodus, or I forgot what they call it. Yes, I see Michelle nodding. So I was one of those people. My background was actually in chemical engineering, and I quit actually a year ago this month to focus on my blog full time. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and my presentation is all about how not to kill your houseplants, and I have a lot of pictures and anecdotes in there. So without further ado, I'm trying to share my screen. It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
I got you.
Thank you.
All right, I'm just going to make you host for now.
Perfect. Here we go. Okay. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. So how not to kill your houseplants. Actually, let me go ahead and, oops, sorry about that. Why am I not seeing this? Actually, okay, I'll do it without the animations because it'll be a little bit easier. So have you ever been frustrated with conflicting information on houseplant care? I think many of us have done that. Are you confused as to why you have various problems? You know, there's yellow leaves, there's brown leaf tips, there's your plants not growing. There's a lot of different things going on. And have you always wanted to know how to get your houseplants to thrive once and for all? So I think these are all common problems that we have. And when we have a plant problem, I'm going to ask our group this, where do we usually go? What do we usually do when we have a plant problem? Where do we go?
I usually Google it.
Google it. Yes. Google it.
Google.
Yep. So it all starts with a Google search because Google solves all of life's problems, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's do a Google search. So let's say we Google, why is my Echeveria, let's say in this case, getting a yellow leaf? And Google's answer most of the time is overwatering, which is a term that I feel so strongly about that I included a whole section in my book about the word overwatering because it's rampant. and it causes a lot of fears and misinformation, and I'll get into that shortly. So the problem with using Google to diagnose is there's a lot of sources that oversimplify information and that regurgitate false information. And there's site after site after site regurgitating all the same information, and it doesn't really provide a full picture. But the truth is that all of our problems, all of our plant woes can be caused by multiple factors. And in fact, not only that, but for example, a yellow leaf, that could be caused by keeping your soil too dry or also keeping it too wet. So that's why it can be a little bit tricky, but it doesn't have to be hard. And that's what I go through in my book. So let's look at a few examples. So drooping peace lily, have anyone ever had one of those? It's a common thing. So what is the cause? Is it caused by your potting mix staying too dry? Is it caused by overwatering and root rot? How do we know? How do we know what's causing it? Yellow leaves is another big one. And what's the cause of our leaves yellowing? Is it from our potting mix being too dry? Is it from our roots rotting? Is it from too little light? How do you know what the cause is? Another common problem is brown and crispy leaf edges. Is it caused by, again, your potting mix being too dry? Is your plant root bound? Is it improper watering? The water quality, maybe it's low humidity, fertilizer burn. Which one is it? How do we know? How do we know how to diagnose? So what's missing is observation. So people in general are lazy, right? As humans, we're lazy. We want a quick answer. We want it now. We don't want to wait. We don't want to think, right? So what's missing is observation. So we can't just read something and go from there. We can't blindly trust Google, because it's not going to help us be a better plant parent. So we have to observe. We have to observe everything with our own senses, our sense of touch, our sense of sight, our sense of smell, and so on, in order to determine what is your specific cause. Google can't do that for you. So in my book, I teach what I call holistic plant care. So we can't take different topics and silo them. We can't treat them separately. They all have to be considered together. And so we have to consider all of the following aspects for good plant growth, which include light, watering and fertilizing, the type, not only the type of pot, but the size of your pot, humidity, the type of potting mix, temperature, and last but not least, consistency. So a lot of people always say, oh, how do I get such a big, beautiful rubber plant, like you have? It's not really even all about doing all of these things right. It's also doing all of these things right and consistently. In the end, really, that's the true secret. I should say there's no secrets. We just have to be very consistent with applying a little bit of our knowledge. So some of the topics that I clarify in the book include all of these 8 topics. So I go through overwatering, one of my pet peeve words. I talk about watering schedules, moisture meters, light, potting mixes, repotting, misting, and fertilizing. So I'll touch on these a little bit to get a taste of all these things. So number 1, overwatering. This is my biggest pet peeve. Anything that you Google, why is my plant getting yellow leaf? Why is my plant getting a brown leaf? Why is my plant blah, 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 blah? All the answers on Google tell you overwatering. And these are the sites that regurgitate all this information, but they don't tell you why. So listen up. So there's virtually no such thing as overwatering. So unless you don't have a drainage hole, which I don't recommend, I always recommend having a drainage hole in your pots. So the goal is to thoroughly moisten your potting mix. So I always say, do you care about all of the roots, or do you only care about some of them? I care about all of them. So you want to make sure that you water thoroughly. Now, the fear of the word overwatering causes people to be so afraid that to water properly that they actually do the opposite, and they desiccate their plants, and they actually end up dehydrating their plants. So my request is for everyone here is to erase the word overwatering from your vocabulary. But what should we say instead of that? I encourage you, instead of saying overwatering, say my potting mix has stayed too wet. And the reason why is because it eliminates that fear, and it causes you, it should prompt you to think. So why has your potting mix stayed too wet? And then determine why. So don't blame proper watering practices, and you shouldn't have to tiptoe around watering properly. Instead, we have to consider all of these following factors, because all of these things affect how quickly or slowly your potting mix will dry out. Number one, absolutely number one, most important thing is light. Plants photosynthesize using light. If you have your plant in a dark corner, it's not going to be able to use enough water in order to grow. So that is the absolute top priority. There's no such thing as overwatering. I call it underlighting. If you're underlighting your plant, that's a huge issue. And then all of the rest of these also affect the soil moisture. The pot material, whether you have a plastic pot or terracotta, and I'll get into all these soon, drainage holes or lack thereof, accumulation of water in the saucer under your plant or in a cache pot, which is basically just a decorative pot that typically doesn't always have a drainage hole. Pot size is very important. So don't use a pot that's obscenely huge, because of the excess volume of soil will take too long to dry out. The potting mix type also makes a big difference. How root bound a plant is, and temperature and humidity are also important. All of these things affect how quickly your soil dries out. Number two, watering schedules. So I don't know if anybody has watering schedules for their plants, but I get this question all the time. How often should I water my Monstera? How often should I water my rubber plant, or whatever it is? And because people don't like to think, they don't always like this answer. And the answer is it depends. And the reason is because we saw the things that affect soil moisture in the previous slide, right? Can a watering schedule work? Yes. Will it eventually fail? Yes. And that's because plants will end up growing. So things are changing. Our conditions change, lighting conditions change, temperature changes, all sorts of different things change. However, that being said, a regular schedule to use as a touch point is wonderful, because then you can determine, does my plant need to be watered or does it not? So don't use a calendar to determine definitively, I'm going to water my plants every Saturday, because each plant will respond differently and each plant will be different. My conditions are different than your conditions, so our soil will take a different amount of time to dry out. Moisture meters. I don't know if anybody uses moisture meters here, but it's a fairly popular thing, especially among new plant parents. I don't recommend using moisture meters for a variety of reasons. Many of them, especially the very inexpensive ones that you can get at Home Depot and Lowe's, are junky and they're not reliable at all. And in fact, I don't know how many people, anybody from a scientific background, I know Jeremy, you'll understand this. Moisture meters actually don't measure moisture, they measure conductivity. And so depending on what's in your potting mix, it can vary drastically. And also you can't even calibrate, the inexpensive ones that you get. So a lot of them can be wildly inaccurate. And they also drive the wrong behavior and reduce your ability and willingness to observe. So again, the thinking portion that I encourage people to implement. So here's an example. So these two pictures came from one of my readers on my blog. And, it's kind of funny because people are frantic and they're acting like someone's about to die. It's their plants, but so here we have an example. On the left is a rubber plant and on the right is a Chinese evergreen. And she said, these plants, were so beautiful before. Now they look like they're dying. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. So the first thing when someone reaches out to me, with a problem like that, I always say, send me a photo. And so she sent me these 2 photos and I said, okay, now tell me, asking a million questions. I'm an engineer by background. I taught problem solving in my corporate job too. And I asked a million questions and I said, well, tell me about your lighting conditions. Where are your plants? Tell me how you're watering. And then it turned out, she said, well, I use a moisture meter. And I said, okay. And she said it's still reading moist, because it'll say dry and then moist and what or whatever it is. And then she said, and I said, well, when was the last time you actually watered? And she goes, oh, it was a few months ago. So I said, there you go. So it's still reading moist and you last watered a few months ago. I'm sure those pots are bone dry. So that's a prime example of why, you should not use a moisture meter. Use your finger instead. So do the finger test. Don't rely on appearance of the soil only, because I've had that issue too, where I've looked at the soil of a particular plant. And normally, when soil's wet or potting mix is wet, it gets darker. And then when it dries, it gets a little bit lighter. And for this particular case, I don't know why, it still looked dark to me. So I kept waiting and waiting and waiting. And then the plant started to droop. And then I touched the soil and it was bone dry. So don't rely on appearance only. You stick your finger in the soil and see how it feels. That's honestly the best thing that you can do. Another thing that you can do is lifting the pot to judge the weight. So lift it up, when the soil's dry, get a good gauge for how heavy it is, and then water your plant, let all the water drain out, then pick it up again and kind of feel, how heavy it is after you've done, you've completed watering. And so, it's a little bit subjective, but it's a little bit, it is science, but it's also an art as well. So it takes a little bit of time to get used to. And of course, you also have to know how dry each type of plant likes to get. That's where it gets more complicated, because we have so many different types of houseplants from many different ecosystems. So if you know nothing, even if you don't know anything about the type of plant that you have, here's a good rule of thumb that you can use to help gauge moisture levels, or how much water each specific plant likes, even if you don't know what it is. So in general, plants that have very thin leaves, such as most ferns, need a lot more moisture than plants that have thicker or more succulent leaves, like Hoyas, Echeverias, Sansevierias, or snake plants, which is now reclassified into a different genus, Dracaena. But that's a good rule of thumb to use, even if you don't know what the plant is. So remember that thin leaves, they need a lot more water. They like to stay a lot more moist than plants that have thicker leaves. You can let those dry out a lot more without the plant suffering. So some watering rules of thumb. So always water thoroughly. Don't measure the amount of water. I've had tons of people come to me saying that they have their succulent and they give it maybe 2 teaspoons of water every other week because they're afraid to overwater and blah, blah, blah. Don't do that. Don't measure. It's not necessary to measure the amount of water. You want to thoroughly water your plants, even succulents. So like I mentioned, don't be afraid of overwatering. Be afraid of not enough light. Be afraid of pots that are too huge. Be afraid of poor drainage or pots with no drainage holes. So I always circle the watering can around the entire surface of the pot until water escapes the drainage hole, and always have a drainage hole. The water needs somewhere to go. Otherwise, you have to be just way too careful with your watering, and discard all the excess water. Don't let your plants sit in water for extended periods of time. For an hour or two, that's fine. That's not going to hurt anything. Next topic is light. So like I mentioned before, that's the basis of plant growth. Everything works better when there's sufficient light. And here's a quote that I have from I don't know if I took it from my book or if I just quoted myself here, but remember this: placing a plant in a dark corner is basically like having a child and not feeding your child, because you're basically starving your plant, because plants make food for themselves using light. So remember that light should be a top priority whenever you bring a plant home. And plants indoors actually can take a lot more light than you'd think. So consider this. So this graph, so I actually took a light meter and I measured the amount of light at a window. So if you look at the horizontal x-axis, that's the distance from a certain window in my house in feet. And then on the y-axis is the foot candles of light. So that's just a measure of the light intensity. So if you look at 0 feet, which is right at the window, almost basically touching the window, we have about, let's say, roughly a little bit less than 1,500 foot candles of light, which is in light intensity. Just by moving 1 foot away, look at the drop. So now it's, suddenly about 900 foot candles, down from about 15. Then we move another foot away, just 2 feet away from the window. Now we're down under 400. So there's a dramatic difference. There's a dramatic drop in the light intensity the further you get from a window. And not only that, if I were to stand outside, so we have this 0 feet inside, this is indoors. If I were to step just outside on the other side of the glass, that's going to skyrocket, because we're losing a lot of light just by virtue of the fact that light is passing through a window, for the reflection and refraction and all that, fancy physics crap. So remember this, the distance from a window matters in a big way. Another thing I wanted to mention that's very important, and these are all things that all my readers and followers have struggled with. It's all the same stuff over and over and over and over again. So I condensed this all into my book. Light acclimation. So a lot of people, especially in Ohio, we have our dark winters, our short days. Whenever we get a nice day, sometimes I get one of my readers say, oh, it's a beautiful day outside. It's sunny, it's warm. I took one of my, snake plants or my rubber plants and I moved it outside and, to give it some sun. And then a few hours later, they bleached, they burned, sun scald. And they think, then they'll say to me, well, they must not like the light. So I just brought them back inside and put them in a darker spot. That's not true. So what happened in these cases that I just described is that you didn't acclimate your plant slowly enough, and that's why that's why it burned. So even plants that like direct sun, that like a lot of sun, it could be banana plants, hibiscus, these snake plants, rubber plants, all of these plants actually thrive in full sun. But if you move a plant from indoors to outdoors, you have to acclimate them slowly, otherwise you're going to burn. So it's similar to, think about sunburn for people. In the winter, I get pasty white, right? And then if I suddenly go to a beach in Mexico and sit out in the sun for 10 minutes or half an hour, I'll be burned. So it's the same thing. So if you move a plant from indoors to outdoors, even for sun-loving plants, you have to put them in complete shade for a while, for a few days first, and then slowly increase the amount of light. So don't forget that. It's not that your plants don't like direct sun, you just have to acclimate them. Now, I'm not saying put all your plants in full sun, but this is a common problem that I've seen my readers face. Potting mixes. So there is not one magic potting mix. There's quite a variety of potting mixes that you can use, and you can alter them to suit your own conditions. And the more chunky material you add, whether it's perlite or pumice or orchid bark, there's a lot of things that you can add to your prepackaged potting mixes, the quicker your mix will dry out. This could be both a pro and a con. So a lot of commercial potting mixes don't have good porosity. For example, bags of Miracle-Gro. I buy those bags of Miracle-Gro. There's, Espoma is another good brand, but they don't have enough of this chunky material in there. So I like to add, some material like perlite or pumice in order to make the mix more airy, allow more air to the roots. And that way you'll reduce the risk of root rot, and you'll reduce the risk of your potting mix taking too long to dry. So a good blend should have sufficient moisture retention because you don't want to be watering every day, but you also want it to dry out in a reasonable amount of time, but not too quickly. You don't want to be watering all the time. Repotting. So if you get a new plant, I always recommend to you, don't rush to repot. And oftentimes it is done much too frequently. And a lot of times, it's almost a last-ditch effort in someone trying to help a plant that a suffering plant. It's not always the best thing to do. So only repot, or technically up pot, if you're placing it in a larger pot, when a plant is root bound. As you can see in this case, this is my ponytail palm, which is actually not a palm at all. It's more of a succulent. And this clearly needs a bigger pot. So a very important potting tip: you need to loosen the root ball. So you can see in this, you see how tightly wound the roots are, very tightly bound. You want to loosen those up. Oops, sorry. So here I just tease the roots apart. You don't have to go too crazy, but loosen things up a little bit, because that is going to help the new roots grow into your new pot. One time, many years ago, before I knew any better, I had a peace lily that was horribly root bound, and I just, pulled it out of the pot, put it in a brand new one. I didn't loosen the roots, kept it as is, and then it didn't respond the way I wanted, and it kind of moped and didn't grow much. And then maybe a year later, I decided to take it out of the pot and take a look. There wasn't a single root that grew into the new soil because I had not loosened the root ball, and the roots were so tightly bound. So that's a very important thing to do. Another general repotting tip is only go up one pot size generally. So you can break the rule, as you gain more experience, but what do I mean by that? So let's say you have a pot. Pots are normally measured in the diameter of the pot, the size of the diameter. So for example, if you have a 4-inch pot, then I would recommend, if you repot, go to a 6-inch diameter pot. So they normally come in 2-inch increments, 4, 6, 8, 10, and so on. And the reason is because if you go from, let's say, a 4-inch pot to a 10-inch pot, that's a lot of excess soil, and that's going to take a lot longer to dry out. So that's the reason why that's recommended. Misting. So misting does not increase humidity. So that's a common myth. What you're doing is you're just wetting the plant's leaves. You'll have to be, squeezing that trigger on the mister all day to really increase the humidity to an appreciable level for your plant. So unless you want to get carpal tunnel, I don't recommend doing that. Misting will have virtually a zero impact on humidity because you're just wetting the plant's leaves. You're not increasing the amount of water vapor in the air. So the best thing to do to increase humidity is just get a humidifier. That's really the easiest way to do that. And get one that's rated for your room. Normally they're rated by the square footage of the room. So let's say if you have, a 200 square foot room, don't get a humidifier that's rated for a 50 square foot room. If you go oversized, that's fine. You're just going to reach your humidity level quicker. So make sure you pay attention to that. You can also set plants on moist pebbles, tray of moist pebbles, and also hoarding plants together also increases your humidity, because plants transpire water through their stomata, which are basically their pores. So they release water vapor into the air. So the more plants you have, the more humidity, the more water vapor they're going to release into the air. Another important thing is also, if you increase humidity, it's also a good idea to increase air circulation with a fan, because that'll help minimize fungal issues, which can be very prominent. If you have really high humidity and no air circulation, that could be very problematic. Another thing that you may have heard or that you'll read is that low humidity causes brown, crispy leaf edges. And yes, definitely can. But more commonly, brown, crispy leaf edges are caused by super dry soil. So make sure, that you haven't let your potting mix go completely dry, and that, it wasn't a chronic issue, because that's going to cause a lot more brown, crispy leaf edges than low humidity ever will for for most plants. I always say proper watering and soil moisture levels are way more important to be able to accomplish before, considering humidity. Fertilizing, some tips for fertilizing. So don't fertilize to compensate for cultural shortcomings. So what do I mean by that? So let's say if you have your plant in a dark corner, don't think that if you fertilize it, it's going to make it better, because it won't. It's just going to encourage weaker growth. Put it right in front of a window, give it better light. It's not a Band-Aid. It's supposed to supplement your good growing conditions. And it's important because plants indoors don't have the benefit of receiving nutrients like plants outdoors do, from decaying leaves or animal droppings and rotting branches and bark. So we have to take over that because nature, we have to take nature's spot. So that's why we have to fertilize. Real quickly here. So fertilizer information, fertilizers always have 3 numbers on the label. For example, 10-10-10 or 5-10-5, or in this picture, 7-9-5. This is actually the fertilizer I use. And in a nutshell, the first number, if you remember, anybody knows chemistry or has taken chemistry, N stands for nitrogen. So that is predominantly for leaf growth. The middle number is phosphorus, and that's mainly for flower and root growth. And the last one, K, stands for potassium. It affects physiological plant processes, disease resistance, and a lot of other things. But these are the basics. Some tips too for fertilizing: measure out. Always measure out the liquid fertilizer and the water. Don't eyeball it, because you can burn your plants if you have too concentrated of a solution. So I use these plastic measuring spoons and a gallon jug or gallon watering can so that I measure everything out properly. Fertilize anytime a plant is actively growing. If it's in the middle of winter and things are kind of going at a snail's pace and your plant's not growing, you can stop then and then resume. As days get longer, your plants start to grow again, then you can go ahead and resume. If you have your plants under grow lights, let's say year round, and your plant's growing year round, then by all means, fertilize year round. So that's basically it. So all of these topics here are included in my book, Houseplant Warrior, 7 Keys to Unlocking the Mysteries of Houseplant Care. So I talk about light, humidity, purchasing plants, watering and fertilizing, pots, repotting, potting mixes, diagnosing plant problems. And I actually have case studies from everything that from all my readers, and I condensed them down into 4 case studies. And I also talk about propagating a variety of plants. And then that's the first half of the book. And the second half contains dozens of different houseplants with specific care, and also how to deal with pests. My website is ohiotropics.com. You can go under it looks a little bit different than this now, but the menu is still the same. If you go under books, you can click on Houseplant Warrior, and I have a list of everywhere you can buy the book. It's also on Amazon. It's in Barnes & Noble, Target, all those places, anywhere that you can find, that you would find books. And so my blog, Ohio Tropics, you can find me on Instagram at Ohio Tropics. I'm on YouTube. I haven't done too much in the past several months, but I do still have that. I'm also on Facebook, and you can email me with any questions at Raphael@ohiotropics.com. Any questions?
Yeah, please feel free to ask Raphael some questions. Michael asked a question about misting, but it looks like you covered that. And Laura had a question. She was curious about the photos and where you got your information on some of the data.
Can you, for which particular one? So these photos are actually all mine, that I used in the presentation. And was that your question, Michelle?
No, that was me. And they're really professional looking.
Oh, thank
I was
you.
thinking, gosh, you have a pretty house too.
Thank you. Yeah, those are all photos from my plants in my home. So And I took all of those with my iPhone. They take
Yeah, that's great.
good photos.
They're wonderful. Yeah. And well, as long as I'm talking, your Facebook name is for Facebook.
So Ohio Tropics Houseplant Care is the group
Okay,
for that. Yep,
thanks.
you're welcome. Any other questions?
All right. Thank you so much, Raphael. That was
Uh,
incredibly informative.
Hope you enjoyed it.
I did. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have a ton of plants, and my wife knows a lot more than me, and I've never I like gardening and I like doing that kind of stuff, but she's always been much more attuned to it and better read than I am. And there's some stuff in here we're realize that we're running on a lot of hearsay.
That's right.
Yeah, there's a lot, and they're always all the same myths, misconceptions. Once you really get into it, it's really not that complicated. There's just a lot of noise out there that keeps being repeated, and so we kind of, that was a goal of my book, is to break all the myths and to just simplify it to the basics, so that anybody can grow plants well and diagnose their particular issues, because all of our conditions are different, and so what I experience is different from what you may experience in your home.
Sure. All right. Well, thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
We are going to shift gears now to Michelle R. Smith, who is from Cleveland. She is a poet, and she's going to read us some excellent poetry. Okay, I'm going to actually put the spotlight on her. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, Michelle is a writer, educator, cultural facilitator, and native Clevelander. She is the programming associate for Literary Cleveland and a teaching artist for Lake Erie Inc. She is the author of the poetry collections Ariel in Black and the Vagina Analogues. She has been publishing in I'm going to say that wrong.
It's poem with my story.
Memoir story. Sorry. There we go. It got me all as one word. Meridian's Feminism, Race, Transnationalism, The Normal School, and the Gasconade Review. She is the creator, co-producer, and director of Black's Museum, an annual performance showcase for Northeast Ohio artists open to all forms and dedicated to honoring notable Black figures in American history and culture, which is celebrating its 5th anniversary, from what I understand.
5th anniversary, yep, which is crazy. February 2023 will be our 5th year.
Excellent. And her favorite novelist is Toni Morrison, and she splits her favorite poet title between, I'm going to pronounce that wrong too.
Ntozake Shange, Sylvia Plath, Victoria Chang, and Saeed Jones.
I think it's Saeed Jones, yeah. All right. Thank you for saving me there.
No, it's fine.
And Michelle, take it away.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much. Raphael, that was great. I have one plant. I had 4 and I killed systematically 3.
Oh,
so
no.
Now I feel confident in getting another one.
Good. Glad you enjoyed it.
No, it definitely gave me some insight into why those other ones didn't make it. But I have this one spider plant. Her name is Anansi, and she's been hanging on with me for the whole quarantine. So.
All right.
All right, so I split this up into 4, 4, and 4. I'm going to do 4 from Ariel, which is the first book, 4 from Analogues, and then I have 4 new ones. And I'm putting the new ones last because they're all untried and very new. So one I actually finished right before I got on today, which is why I was on a little bit later than Jeremy asked, because I was trying to figure out the last line. So if the last 4 suck, just know that that's because they're the newest, and they'll probably be revised the next time you hear them. So I'm going to start with Ariel in Black, which is my first collection, and it's called Ariel in Black because it's a collection of Shintos that are made out of Sylvia Plath's book Ariel. So these are all poems made out of poems. And we're going to start with Shinto number 3, which is the beauty industry to the Black girl. Oh my, what a trash of old bandages, boredoms, old faces, dead hands, dead stringencies. And I, lens of mercies, I see your cute decor close on you like the fist of a baby. You poke and stir in your vacuous black, jumpy as a Mexican bean. Oh, high riser, my little loaf, stop crying. Do not be afraid. In the picture I have of you, you flicker, clear of voices and history, flayed of fur and humanity, a wedding cake face in a paper frill. Somebody is not, is somebody not muted? Does anybody hear that feedback? Okay.
Sorry, Michelle, I accidentally muted you.
Was it me?
No, it wasn't.
Okay. All right. So this next one, there are 3 poems in this collection of Shintos dedicated to the 3 sort of main stereotypes about Black women that just sort of pervade our culture. If you know, it's the Mammy, the Jezebel, and the Sapphire. And so it's sort of a triptych of poems. And my favorite out of the 3 is Jezebel's Requiem. So that's the one I'm going to read. This is called Jezebel's Requiem. And the Jezebel is the sort of stereotype of the Black woman as sort of oversexed. So when you see, you know, like Black women twerking and the whole idea that we're just sort of like, you know, all butts and breasts and all of that, that's sort of a takeoff on that stereotype of the Jezebel that goes all the way back historically to slavery. So Jezebel's Requiem. Remember, lies have propped the walls of your hothouse. Strings attached in the valley of your thighs that revolve around the wheels of their terrible brains. Remember, they crap and puke lies. They wake and sleep lies. They walk and talk lies. The staticky noise, the churn of the impotent man. Once you were beautiful, untouched and untouchable. You have fallen a long way. Your body drags history after it like a dark crime. Grief worms like plasma through the beautiful pink of your waist-high wet. Once you were beautiful. Your sweet sex was a pearl. It is love you were full of, clamoring blackly in its strangle of flesh. These maniacs, marshals, admirals, generals of everything, of business, these great vulturous light borrowers, emptied you of sugar. I have buried your mottled body, this apparition, with excessive love. I have swabbed your nakedness clean of tarnishes, pinned flat pink roses, desperate butterflies to your hair. Goodbye. Do not be ashamed. Do not be ashamed. You are something else over and under your tongue, breast, hands, privates, needs. Remember your sunken heart, your flowery kindness, your immaculate mathematics. Remember your radiance, your beauties, your blood. Remember, every body is a whore, but the soul is a bride. Okay. So this next one is one that I very rarely read. I just started reading it out, and this is crazy because this book is, oh sheesh, 7 years old. It's crazy how they get old and you don't even realize it. But this one is called The Black Woman Activist or the Sacrificial Yam, and it's for Alicia Garza, Patrisse Cullors, and Opal Tometi, who are the founders of Black Lives Matter. The midwife slapped her foot soles, and your bald cry took its place among the elements. The pure gold baby that melts to a shriek. I wake to listen. One cry, and I stumble from bed. I fly to a name, pumped ahead by these pistons, this blood. It is Adam's side, this earth I rise from, and I in agony, charred skirts and death mask. The Spider-Men have caught you, how they hate you. The face at the end of the flare, kamikaze man. They are smiling, worming themselves into niches, trawling your dark, cold folds of ego. I see your voice, my mind winds to you, old barnacled umbiculus, such a dark tunnel. You flicker, a mouth just bloodied, wrinkly and clear red. I put my hands among the flames. You have a hole, the stain on your gauze darkens and tarnishes. Tears drip and thicken. They weld to me like plums. You are terrified. Open your hand. Here is a hand to fill it and do whatever you tell it. Tend, as water tends to the pebbles it must run over, smoothing them gently, sweetly, sweetly. Oh, love. Black is an art like everything else. I do it exceptionally well. I do it so it feels real. I do it so it feels like hell. To the same place, the same face, the same brute that knocks me out. It's easy enough. I guess you could say I've a call. Clouds pass and disperse. Are those the faces of love, those pale irretrievables? Is it for such I agitate my heart? I breathe in, I turn and burn, tugging the world, jealousy filling my veins with invisibles. The pain, red mottled like cut necks, will tolerate no bystanding. So murderous dead men cry from it. I am nobody. I have given my name and my day clothes up, and my history to my husband and child. My body is a pebble to them, minute and shrunk for export, and I have no face. I have never been so pure. I know the bottom. I know it with my great taproot. It is what you fear. I do not fear it. I have been there. I stand in a column of winged, unmiraculous women. And this last one is actual Ariel in Black. So this is the titular poem. And then we're going to move to analogs. So Ariel in Black. I live here in a cell of sorts. Oh, wait. Start it over. I live here in a cell, a sort of grave, a panic of skin and blood and bone, shut as a seashell. Freakish, beautiful, obscene, black over blue. Stubbornly hanging on to myself by the roots of my hair. I am nude as a chicken neck, small, shrunk. I am ill, a homunculus, an unstrung puppet dying to fly. I am terrified by this dark thing flapping and sucking, winding and twining, stuck in my body. It is a heart. All day I feel its turnings, its malignity, its snaky asses kiss my blue veins. I taste blood, warm and salt. I taste myself dissolving. I cannot run. I cannot unpeel from this suit, these years. I cannot undo myself. I am still raw, remembering the pain of wars, wars, wars. I am stuck, eyeing my scars, hearing my crackling. I am stuck, starless and fatherless, black and blackening. That's it. I still really love those poems. There are only 9 of them. And the back of the book is all these poems I've written about Sylvia Plath over the years. So I feel like I need to start reading those, and maybe I will next time. So this is my second book. This is The Vagina Analogues. So the reason it's called that is it's a play on, of course, the Vagina Monologues, but it's this sort of idea. I don't know if people know this book. It's called, oh, hold on one second. So it's called All the Women Are White, All the Blacks Are Men, but Some of Us Are Brave. And so it's this idea that when we talk about sexism and oppressed women, we're almost always talking about white women. And when we talk about racism and oppressed Black people, we're largely talking about men. And so Black women get excluded from both conversations, even though we are people who are uniquely situated to be suffering from both at the same time. So when we talk about important Black lit, a lot of times we're talking about the literature that was written by men. And I sort of decided to take those pieces written by men and make them women's pieces to kind of just signify on the fact that when you're talking about Blackness, you're talking about women. And then when you're talking about oppression in Black women, you're talking about racism and sexism too. So that's why they're analogs. So each of these is based on a poem written by a man. But the challenge that I gave myself was that it had to be an all new poem. So no patchwork revision. It had to be an all new poem that operated in the same way as theirs, but was completely female. So this one is the blue. Two of them will be Saeed Jones analogs, which the whole thing about Saeed being one of my favorite poets. But this is the first. It's called The Blue Dress, which is analog to The Blue Dress by Saeed Jones. Her blue dress is chiffon froth, is libation, is water seeps into the throat of her thirst for beauty, is slaking, is river cotton, is the stars of Ara stitched into eyes of Aegon, is hello in a crowded plantation parlor, is hello in a room of milk glass boys and black amethyst boys, is the plop, blop plop of paint dripping off the brushes of hoodoo medicine mothers and daughters, is the Atlantic Ocean, is a heavenward sea lane, is tears like leaks from the hearts of hardened mourners, is hurricanes mowing over boy toy cities, is a brook, is a harbor, is a sound, is a current come to take me in its arms away from here, is me moving sideways in her dress, and our genetic gravity is the full moon, has me moving sideways in our genetic gravity, is me in a blue dress tiding toward the moon, is my mother, is my moon, is my Vina Cava. This next one is for Black women poets who bow to sexism, and it's an analog to For Black Poets Who Think of Suicide by Etheridge Knight. So, Black women should eat, not pick at platters of skimpy choices like the white girls do. Black women should eat, not starve themselves to fit anorexic tropes like the white girls do. Black women should seek, but not obsess over happy epilogues, nor stalk rabbits down psychedelic trails like the white girls do. For Black women lead Black people, are the bearers of Black hopes, are the organs of Black sorrows, are the muscles of Black rage. Let all Black women live as poems and be recited with the faith of prayers. So the second one is the other Saeed Jones one. Hold on one second. I'm just sending Jeremy a quick note already. And this is Girl in a Stolen Evening Gown, analog to Boy in a Stolen Evening Gown by Saeed Jones. In this imperial hothouse, I am a pet butterfly. How I wear the world, sequin hem flouncing my way through cobra lilies, sweet, lethal blossoms. I pirouette in a cloud of carnivores. Woman who is not yet, woman who is yet not, I fight to undo my antique buttons, peel off the chiffon yoke I am squeezed into. I wiggle my hips free from fashion, my bruised flesh flopping out of my steel corsetry. See me. I am ripping apart this slavish silhouette, loosing the wildness I have tucked up under my wig. Watch me. Slip out of this falseness. Leave the dress and its white mess at my feet. I could be a mannequin, or I could be the girl wearing nothing at all of theirs, a negligee of my own Black skin. So now I have to decide whether I want to read. I think I'll read I want to be fat. So this is it's very subtle title, right? Very, very nuanced. This is I Want to Be Fat. It's an analog to I Want to Be Fat by Terrence Hayes. I want to be fat. I want a belly big enough to hold a refrigerator stuffed with laughs, hips wide enough for ancestral rhythms to stretch all out in. I want a heart bigger than a Ram HD engine. I want to be fat like an African elephant, my skin fierce, hot, thick-set black with a hulky trunk and terrifying tusks that wrestle my food into my mouth, forklift any trees standing in my way. When I am fat, white girls afraid of bad carbs will whisper, "Look at her. My God, how she gets so big." And beneath those questions, they'll think, "I wonder if she still has sex. I wonder what she looks like naked." Love me, skinny girls, as you love hunger. Love me, fat girls, as you love satisfaction. I'll let you kiss every dimple of cellulite in my ass. I'll baptize you in the sweat pooling between my tits. When I'm fat, I'll scramble a dozen doubts each morning, brush my teeth after I devour them. This, of course, in the hours before I become the freak show, before I stalk the streets like a kaiju, breathing fire and freedom. I won't cry crocodile tears when white girls say I am beautiful. I'll curse their political lies and I'll blow kisses to you, Lizzo. Your ass like big baked yams, your breasts like pocatudinous islands beneath your Lady Godiva wig. You motherfuckers will have to acknowledge my fat black ass exists. I want to be the queen of excess, the big black mouth sucking smug perfect teeth. I want fat kids to send me emails of self-respect and regalement. I want to swell thick with pride and with joy. I want to live in an ocean of love, this ocean of flesh, this heart like a whale singing at the center of it, this heart like a moon waxing high above, bigger, 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 bigger. Lizzo is on Peloton. Oh, Lord. Lizzo is everywhere. Lizzo is the patron saint of black fat girls. I like Lizzo, but sometimes I feel some ways. All right. So these next four are new. So as I said, please excuse. They might be a little bit rough, but I sometimes just like to try them out. And my printer didn't print, so I'm gonna pull them up and read them. So if my eye contact looks weird, it's because I'm reading off of Word. The first one is, I do have a new collection that I'm trying to get published, and it's sort of about the quarantine and what was sort of going on in my house. It was really complicated. You had a Black woman, a Black man, and a 13-year-old non-binary kid in one house during the quarantine. I was working from home. The kid was doing homeschool, and my husband was working like 3 jobs and doing a lot of activism. So the quarantine took a toll. But this one is called Messiah, but it's MESS-IAH. You are so your father, a sinner, an angry God, his triplicate copy, starver, torture, toppler. You are his revelation, his unkillable issue, and he is yours. My brimstone man, bright yellow bushfire. Your love is the light in my eyes, smoke in my nose, taste on my tongue. You are blinding and layered and meaty, a lamb in my arms, a lion with my head in your mouth. You are so holy, turning out temples, praying with pretty hands, taking vain. I am your storefront church. Oh, how I've believed you, lit and lit and lit your votive heart. I have scrubbed your bloody crucifix. I have testified. I have wept. I have knelt for you. I am here now on the threshing floor, my knees grounded to the rice left over from my parents and your parents' weddings. I come before you petitioning for the girl I couldn't be, that little calf without blemish, taken and slaughtered, twin of the boy you were, also sacrificed to your imperious, absent dad. Lo, I come before you petitioning for the girl we have, for the grace that I wanted. Yet we know gods do not favor their children. Gods do not favor their mothers. Gods repay pain with pain. They dry seas and rivers. They rule with iron and shed blood. Yes, I know. God love is whirlwind and storm. It melts hills. It quakes mountains, spits swords from a furious mouth. It won't spare our daughter. It didn't spare you. It won't save me. I'm checking. Okay. I just wanted to check back and make sure that everybody was good. Okay. This next one is a tribute to Luso Clifton. Luso Clifton is one of those names when you're a Black woman and you write poetry that you always know. And I think people assume that there are just these poets that you've read sort of exhaustively. But Luso Clifton is one that I never really read. So I took the time during the quarantine to really read Luso Clifton. And so this poem is dedicated to her, and it's actually a Shinto made out of her poems. That's like one of my favorite forms, if you haven't already guessed. So this is Luso Clifton is. Luso Clifton is black as ripe papaya, black as sweet berries, black as rock, black as sky, is black as birds, black as lace, black as love, black as grief. Is heart's ease, is love being, is dream dreams, is a universal poem, one brilliant brown buffalo heart. She is political, unsparing of America, always, in all ways. She has such knowledges as bone and blood, as spiders and as serpents. And I shut up and stand there every time I meet her, happy, grateful, turning in to my own self. Luso Clifton is mama, such a good mama. Mama, let me love your face. Mama, let me be born again. A dark, dazzling daughter, a magic word pronounced as a bright blue diamond, somebody in my own house. Luso Clifton is the shore where my pain is dressed, where my spirit is unfenced, where my desires are alive and possible. Amen. Praise to her name. Praise to her splendid and holy name. Won't you celebrate with me what she shaped with 12-fingered hands? Won't you celebrate the life she lived? Won't you say a Black yes to her poems, bringing joy like sweet, 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 sweet water? So 2 more. So I don't know if anybody's seen the movie The Wife with Glenn Close. Has anybody seen this movie? If you are a writer, Laura, okay, you have to see this movie if you're a writer. It is, first of all, amazing. Glenn Close is amazing, but also the premise of it is incredible. And so I watched it the other day and it blew my mind. So the only other thing I like more than like as much as books is movies. And so like, I was like, oh my God. And I used to write essays about movies. I was a film, film was my concentration in school. So now I don't write essays about them or reviews. I write poems. So this is a poem that is called The Wife, and it's inspired by the film. I have learned all the lies you love. I have learned all the loves you lie. I have lied loves. You have loved lives. I have loved lies. You have lied loves. I have loved you. I have lied you. I have learned you. I have you, love. I have you all. It's probably easier to look at a lot of L's. And films can be poems, absolutely, and often are. That's a good one. It's amazing. So this last one is a found poem, and it's from this essay called The Shape of the Void Toward a Definition of Poetry by Eliza Gabbard. And the reason I ended up writing this is because I was at this conference and the WIC Poetry Center had this thing where you could like write poems, and they had all this, like tech. And so one of them was you can write a found poem using this essay. So of course, me being as intense and weird as I am, I couldn't just do it there, like, cause I needed time. So then I got the name of the essay, went home and like did it like homework. because I'm a nerd. But I also love the challenge of making, there's something about using other people's words and expressions to make your own. That's like one of the things I think I do to just like challenge myself. I think anybody who's written poems for a long time knows like you have your own alphabet of poetry, like your own idiolect, like all these words you use and all these things you know how to do. And after a while, you're doing the same thing over and over. And if you're not careful, so I like to like get into other people's stuff and like kind of use it because I think it keeps me on my toes. I think it's very easy for me to write my poems, and it's harder to use material that's not me to try to make poems that are me. So I've been doing a lot of found poems lately, a lot of chantos, a lot of poems in form, and it's kind of new for me. But this one is a found poem, and it is called Poetry Is. So Poetry Is a found poem from The Shape of the Void toward the definition of poetry by Elisa Gabbard. And it's in the New York Times if you want to actually read the essay. I say poetry is language that's love, helpful coherence, pieces that are left when something breaks, falls apart, is destroyed. Poetry is the answer you already know, the words and non-words that people don't say, that one has overlooked. Text forcing white space, reminding you what's not there, cryptic assembly, beauty in language, missingness making search for what is useful, is erotic. What is poetry? The odd bit of form, the slanted rhymes written on the edge of the paper, the honey of the visible, the hive of the invisible. Poetry is liquid with bewilderment, is the line that changes how you write and how you think and even how you are. Poetry is the things I have, the lake, the butterflies, the page, the changes. It can be almost anything. A list of guesses, the answers, the questions, hypnosis, enchantment, bewitchery, subconscious advice, your life. So that's it. Yeah, for that same reason, yeah, Laura, a lot of people turn to translation because it's a opportunity to just sort of do something different and work with some other materials. But that's it. So thank you all so much for hanging on and listening to 12 poems in a row. Did anybody have, I guess, any questions? Oh, thank you, John. About anything? If you have any questions, you can ask. I'm an open book. Oh, thank you, Raphael. That's awesome. All right. Take it away, Jeremy.
Holy cow, man! You guys are so good tonight. It was Michelle, you and Raphael. You guys did an amazing job. Round of applause for everyone. Like that was just awesome. I
I
was
agree.
humbled. It's amazing. I learned so much too through that presentation. And Michelle, your poems, those don't sound like rough drafts. They sound amazing. Okay, so we're gonna take a brief break, a few minutes, go to the bathroom, get some water, do whatever you need to do. And then we'll go to the open mic portion. So anybody can share any pieces that they may have. Laura's shaking no, that's fine. You don't have to share. There's no there's no onus on it. Yeah, if you'd like to share, please put it in the chat and we'll just go down the list. I feel like, we'll just have I know we have some people here that were specifically here to sit and listen. So that's it might be kind of short, but just let me know. Otherwise, I encourage you, follow Michelle, follow Raphael, get their books, keep up to date with what they're doing. They're amazing writers. And yeah, take a few minutes. Let's say 8:21, 4 minutes. We'll be back. Laura, I'm excited for the Little Reds this week. You're muted.
I still haven't turned in my offering yet, but I had to write 2 reviews this week, so I was like, it takes me forever to write 500 words. It's crazy, but it's worth it because it's fun.
Yeah.
When I'm done.
I always look forward to your writing. It's interesting because it feels a little otherworldly. Like you're really good with the language of your.
It's all true.
Is it?
Oh, sure.
It's a fiction workshop.
Absolutely.
Why did I ask that?
Well, maybe it is subliminally anyway. Yeah, well, I enjoyed discovering some new writers, and I have seen Michelle's name, but I've never listened to her work, so that was fun.
Yeah, she's a terrific reader. I was those poems are so good.
They're yeah, I think it's freeing to pick up a persona so that when you take a figure like I like, Persephone or somebody like that, it helps when you're shy.
Yeah, it does. I remember reading John Berryman, and he had, his love songs collection is different characters talking to each other, and I was always fascinated by that. And I thought
That is interesting. Yeah.
it's very cool. It's powerful stuff, and that's kind of how I don't copy a lot. I didn't pick up a whole lot else from him, but that in particular, I really like living my poems vicariously through characters.
Yeah. Well, we say steal from the best.
Which in my case makes it a very large category.
Yeah, me too. Too. You see all those books back there? That's just half of them.
Yeah, that's my bookcases all wrapped around the room.
Right. Yeah.
All right, well, Doc, it's just you and me, so take it away. You start first, and I'll finish up.
Okay, you asked for it.
Bring it on.
Seeking. They move through my life. One moment here, gone the next. They took with them pieces of me, pieces of my heart. They left behind memories, memories in songs, songs of love undone, songs of saudade, songs of leaving, songs of loss, songs of silence, which echo in my soul. And I move through time, seeking among infinite moments, one who seeks me. And let's see. Merism of B. Biting the acid rind of a bitter wish amid the kinetic kiss of a silent mouth. Evening sunlight shadows sob as they slide across the horizon of night into anonymous alien fractals of time. The voice of the lyre awakens, singing all the hoary ancient tongues of planets and comets, stars and galaxies, as they fall through eternal Chthonian dark on silent streams of infinity. What is unknown becomes known in limitless possibilities of every when and never-ending eons, epochs, eras, and ages, as light slides away in particulate waves and sound echoes voiceless into entropy. All the infinite nows of yesterdays, todays, and tomorrows rise into supernal supernova soliloquies, and rhymeless thoughts flow full flood through shades of memory and hopes of dreams, becoming canons, cantos, and canticles of futures yet to be. Cryptic truths of day and night, dawn and dusk, revealed and concealed in transcendent moments and dappled shadows of what has been or will be, coalesce on the surreal loom of forever, to be woven into the frenetic fabric of existence. And all becomes a conscious oneness, the reality and quiddity of the multiverse in all its effects and affects on matter and energy, in the ebb and flow of creation and destruction, and beginnings and endings which are beginnings, all a merism of be. And I'll finish with Beyond Dreams. Lush galaxies on streams of time, soft chorale of sibilant stars, echoing clouds on serene winds, cascading comets creating rainbows, drumming drums of black holes, swirls of stars, languages of forever, eddies of eternity painting visions, ripples of light refracting warmth, plies of motes are blossoms of color, moons shimmering distant notes, infinite caverns the bowl of sky, gardens of life a scattering of sand, fragrance of eons rustles between, asteroids orbit, meteor showers, rampant dark, magnetism, gravity, particles, waves, all, alles, tu, todo, tutti, hola, home. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doc. All right, I'm going to read one last poem and then we'll say goodnight. And I put the registration for next month's meeting in the chat. Next month, we have John Burroughs and Yaeli Kumarasaweda, and it's going to be phenomenal reading. I'm very, very excited. I am going to read a poem. I figured I'd keep it semi-thematic. I'm going to read a poem called The Garden. This is from actually, I have a little bit of news. My third book got picked up. I haven't announced it yet. It's about, I'm very excited. Thank you. It's about my grandmother and like Alzheimer's and stuff. And it's the publisher is going to be donating all the profits to the Alzheimer's Association, which I'm very excited about. It's been a bit of a passion project, which I usually don't write this close to home, but anyway, okay, so this is called The Garden. My poems are a waste without the compost, fluid and sentimental, filtering into a watering can, sludge across the garden growing the nasty things. Nana says the nasty things sludge up and out, things lurking in old photo albums, hiding in the back of the fridge, fraying like an old shirt, all of which drive me mad. I look over this plot and I see a hollow bruise, covered in bone meal and 12-12-12, hungrily lapping fertilizer and burning my plants, like all the rest of my thunder, growling above a desert. I am watched by camels. The next plot flowers a shoddy diaper, green and black mold crusting where my legs should go, the last breath any of us take, which is followed across the universe when the last proton decays and matter becomes non-existent. If only I was brave enough and smart enough to have brought along a fork, then I could eat. I once asked Nana, where is Orion's belt? And she told me that constellation required the least imagination and that I should try harder. And that's why we're wilting. The weeds will cover the details around us. At the top of my lungs, growing over my graduation cap, arms slung over like a drinking buddy, somehow nutritious, I guess. At the far end of the plot, 4 squirrels are playing chess. Those dumpy fat fucks, they're chittering at me. So I bleat at them like a goat and gnaw at the grass, inching toward the garden, daring them to steal my corn. All right. Thank you very much. I really appreciate everybody coming out this evening. It's always wonderful to do stuff like this. I love just poetry and writing in general, and you guys gave such great presentations tonight. Thank you again to Michelle, and to Raphael. Had to leave a little bit early, but thank you to Raphael as well. Again, I follow Michelle, look out for her new book. I encourage you to get Raphael's. This is part of what it's about, is supporting each other and doing what we can to, just be aware and connect and, make purchases, I guess, at the end of the day. We want to share our books, and we want people to read what we write. So, all right. Thanks again, everybody. Take care and have a wonderful evening.
We'll try. Bye.